What's up, you guys? Welcome to the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Academy. Myself, joined by Hiro and Gracie, Professor Sauer, our uncle, and the president of the Jiu-Jitsu Global Federation, Rickson Gracie. We want to fill you guys in on some of the critical collaborations and discussions that have been taking place regarding the current state of Jiu-Jitsu and what must be done collectively, meaning the entire Jiu-Jitsu community, to preserve the culture, the essence of Jiu-Jitsu for generations to come. Rickson, why don't you begin and fill us in a little bit on the current state of things and how we got to that point?
So first of all, the most important thing for me, which was involved into the Jiu-Jitsu Global Federation, is the fact I felt like for a while, Jiu-Jitsu is being diluted by sometimes people don't have the guidance to perform the perfect academy, the perfect sense of teachings and so on. So restore the culture, restore the knowledge is something which make me motivated to work for the next 20 years on the Global Federation. I feel like those days we need a better guidance to provide better instruction for the community, to increase our sport and also our industry as a whole. So for me the biggest problem was the lack of self-defense into the knowledge, the basic knowledge for every Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. And based on that, we have to regroup and return to the basics and provide to the greatest community the knowledge which is going to make a difference for them in the future.
Talk to us a little bit, Rickson, about why you think, well, essentially the original Gracie Academy and the original path of Jiu-Jitsu, what it was like, because you guys grew up with it, having come from so far back, and we even grew up with it around our grandfather. But for our friends who don't know, talk about the original path and what happened along the way that got us to where we are today.
Yes, basically, in the old times, a student goes to the Jiu-Jitsu school, wanted to learn how to protect themselves, how to fight, because in Brazil the things are hostile and the situation is not exactly having as a sport, was more like a self-defense. So he goes there, he don't think about belt promotion or anything, he just go and make his first 40 lessons are to get a basic knowledge of how to protect themselves in real situation. After that private lessons where they introduce to Jiu-Jitsu in a gentle way and become more confident to resist, to defend, to support, whatever, he starts to become confident in the basics, confident against defending himself against something awkward on the street. Based on that, he starts to become more curious of how he's going to plan or strategize himself against somebody who knows better. And that becomes more like a Jiu-Jitsu against Jiu-Jitsu lifestyle and start to play the game of escaping and choking. So that becomes the game on top of the self-defense. And that's, at one point, the guy feels confident not only to handle street situations, but also to handle a Jiu-Jitsu against Jiu-Jitsu attempt of a triangle choke or escaping from the back, so on. So that becomes like our culture from the beginning, which differs from afterwards when we, for example, move to the United States, where the sport get bigger as a competition, and people start to become more attracted to the competition aspect instead being focused on self-defense. And in that pattern, the students start to become more Jiu-Jitsu against Jiu-Jitsu and less self-defense. And then the things start to become a little diluted because a lot of people today who has great competition skills has no clue how to defend a serious business situation. And that's this kind of imbalance make me feel like if we don't do something in a very serious matter, Jiu-Jitsu will lose their identity, we will lose our culture, because our culture is to handle situations, awkward situations on the street, and of course compete well. But competition is not our priority. Our priority is to really be safe out there and be able to handle any unpredictable situation.
100%. This linear projection that existed in the original Gracie Academy, where students would learn privately so we could control every class in order until they developed that confidence and then moved on, that was lost when things came to America or around that era in the late 70s, 80s, and 90s. And is it fair to say that the proliferation of group classes, where if you have a group with 25 or 30 students and you're the instructor and you're going to teach them, it's hard to control at the right level of bad guy behavior and intensity the street fight opponent behaviors. And at that point you say, hey, I'm going to teach you guys some chokes, and they're going to focus on defeating each other. So in the group class culture, you have this competition culture where the preparation is prioritized on preparing the students for each other. And that's, we think, one of the main reasons why this linear and the self-defense first emphasis was lost. And it even happened at the Gracie Academy between 1989 when the Academy opened and 2006. We were just teaching group classes and people were coming in, and you had the same experience early on as well.
Yep, same thing. So I believe that the self-defense aspect to coming first is so important to build not just the time frame that the guy's going to be in class, but how safe the guy's going to be in class for the long run. And down the road, it's going to translate to be as a basics. So down the road, doesn't matter if you train for 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 10 years. No matter what happens with you, you're always going to have a self-defense aspect. That's, you see the way how we came here to America many years ago. People used to come here with no weight categories, no weight limit. Hickson used to face guys huge. Hoist, I done myself, many other guys done that. But we had a self-defense idea how to protect ourselves. It was not a way to go there and try to do any kind of sport jiu-jitsu and be upside down underneath somebody twice your size. Right. So that's something that's got a little bit lost, and I think it's time to regroup that. And I think this idea is such a wonderful situation to try to regain this, put a curriculum in place,
right?
Make sure that the global federation is out there to support us.
As I'm trying to create a governing body to really reestablish our sense of culture and potential, fully potential, I feel like in that direction, I really feel happy and proud to have, Hannah, Hiron, and the Gracie Academy and the Gracie University aligned, because with little changes you guys made, we can promote self-defense at the highest level, and we also can acknowledge to others who don't have the same program how important it is for us to unify that kind of mentality where self-defense and jiu-jitsu competition are in the same pot, completely aligned, but what comes first has to be self-defense. And then after that, the jiu-jitsu against jiu-jitsu get a different pattern and strength and dedication, which make tough black belts. But I don't really believe the guy can be a tough black belt if he don't know self-defense. A purple belt, brown belt, a blue belt, without self-defense, they feel like hopeless on the street. So I'm very proud to say that kind of alignment will be a great reference for the community who is not yet, because not only those guys here, but a lot of guys who are still working with self-defense patterns, they doing a good job. Different systems, different things, but the same content. When talking about this kind of sense of adjusting, I felt like the only controversy was in the end of the graduation of combatives, people get a blue belt. And that was somehow, a lot of blue belts feel like was not quite perfect.
Right.
So creating this real little adaptation makes us with a good sense of what is the perfect blue belt.
Right.
And the perfect blue belt, like the perfect purple belt or brown belt or black belt, he has to have in his core self-defense skills, which come in first. And then when he starts to play jiu-jitsu against jiu-jitsu and start to become more comfortable to attack in triangles and escapes and sweeps and moves and escape, and then he becomes a blue belt, and eventually purple belt, brown belt, and black belt. So I felt like these little adjustments the Gracie University and Combatives have done is in perfect alignment with what I feel like is the progressive aspect to regain the full potential of jiu-jitsu in the future.
Absolutely, and it was a great honor, and this was very interesting because we used to just give blue belts for people who choke people like everybody else, just a tough blue belt from the competition culture before 2006. In 2006, we assessed our situation and realized that we're not having self-defense effectiveness. So we deliberately changed the definition of the blue belt to be 100% self-defense based, because that was the first milestone, And by changing it to self-defense, we got the results. Everyone learned self-defense. Then they would go into the master cycle, and they would learn the skills in the jiu-jitsu versus jiu-jitsu that the rest of the world was learning from the beginning and exclusively, and they would eventually end up with both skills, and on they went to purple, brown, and black belt as amazing, tough, resilient practitioners. But in discussing with Rickson and collaborating with the Global Federation, we realized that our path is perfect. Right? Starting with self-defense and then moving on. And his suggestion was, Henner, why not introduce at the graduation of combatives a preliminary acknowledgement method so that someone could learn that and then further their grappling jiu-jitsu versus jiu-jitsu skill before earning the blue belt. And we thought it was genius. And therein lies the introduction of the self-defense belt, a white belt with a deep navy blue stripe running through its center that someone will earn upon graduation and demonstration of proficiency in the core self-defense techniques and principles, be it at a certified training center or through Gracie University. Once a person does that, then they move on to what? This competition culture pool, where the goal is to choke each other and develop that resiliency while furthering their self-defense skills, but nonetheless, we're going to now test each other's, sharpen the sword. And they're going to do that for an additional 6 to 12 months on top of already 12 plus months in the Gracie Combatives Foundation. And adding that resiliency, the sparring, the gi, the no gi, the put the gloves on, all the things that Rickson's referring to in terms of jiu-jitsu versus jiu-jitsu, the students will have the opportunity to build that skill set after earning their Gracie Combatives belt, which is the preliminary belt, and then upon doing that, qualify to be assessed for the official blue belt promotion. And the best part is what? They're gonna have both skill sets.
That's major. That's major because I felt like you guys jumping into the boat make me proud and happy because you guys been doing a good job. But I feel like that's gonna be a good reference for all the competition instructors who've been raising and training hard their students. And it's a lack of self-defense, and it's unacceptable in terms of culture how a guy can be a black belt without knowing self-defense or without teaching self-defense or without prioritizing self-defense and their core ability to teach. If I have a woman here, I'm not going to teach competition, I'm going to teach self-defense. If I have a child here, I'm going to teach self-defense. If I have an older guy, self-defense. If I have the toughest guy in the MMA, I will have to teach him self-defense for him to feel like in a good sense of how to apply his ability. So self-defense is our culture, and that's the commitment of the Jiu-Jitsu Global Federation is regain that kind of ability to use self-defense to portray the perfect work we've been doing, we're trying to do for the society as a whole.
And yeah, to this effect, what Rickson's referring to and what's being implemented here and the core idea of this is trying to create the perfect path in a group class environment. And that has been the elusive, tricky aspect and why it was lost for almost three decades. It was lost because that was the mystery and the code that was not being cracked. And the answer to this is a standalone initial self-defense program that a student falls into, participates in, immerses themselves in, anywhere from 8 to 12 to 16 months, immersed in self-defense. And then when they develop that confidence that someone would previously get it only in private classes in Brazil, they can get it in a group class environment.
And this is a brilliant system because it keeps the student motivated, keeps the student attending the classes without rejection, without getting hurt, and oh, I'm not good enough, they leave. So the dropouts in the average school is huge. So in order for us as an industry retain more students and make a better job for the community and as a whole, they start up with a good foundations with self-defense will really bring a perfect positive environment for the student goes for life.
It seems like it might make sense that students themselves, they might see the jiu-jitsu community and the competitions and they say, you know what, I want to do that. And they might want to bypass the self-defense. And it's up to the instructor to not allow that and say, no, the first thing is first. Like you mentioned, you have to have something to fall back on. Yes. You said you fight people who are 20, 50, 80 pounds heavier. So we have to put the student through self-defense first for a solid course so that if something happens, whether it's 8 months down the line or 4 years later or 20 years later, they have this. And you always mention how it isn't a set number of moves.
Yes.
But it's a filter, it's a mindset and understanding,
yes,
which doesn't only happen in that program, in that standalone program, but it continues forever. And just real quickly to discuss on what he said, he mentioned briefly that the self-defense and then the competition of jiu-jitsu versus jiu-jitsu. When Rickson says competition, in my mind, I first thought of that as competing in a tournament. But he means it in the sense of if him and I roll right now, uncle and nephew, we're competing to choke each other with jiu-jitsu.
Right.
Not playful though.
Not playful, but I might let him mount me just out of curiosity to see if he could collar choke me. You understand? I want to know how he will outsmart me.
But no, that's a good clarification.
Yes.
So competition, the term competition does not mean you're competing for points. It means jiu-jitsu against a jiu-jitsu opponent.
Now, and to be also clear, the self-defense principles and the filter that we learn in the beginning, in the street fighting techniques and principles, those will also serve you in the jiu-jitsu versus jiu-jitsu journey, which is going to take you for the rest of your life.
Exactly.
And something which is happening the opposite way right now is maybe in 80%, at least 80% of the academies, the instructors take you to competition. They say, no, forget about self. They even don't mention self-defense.
Yeah.
They just push because sometimes they don't know. They're coming from a generation where they become tougher in competition, promoter, and they become a champions, and they become famous, and they open a school. But that school, even though it's a powerful competition school, has no foundations, has no base in order for him to serve the community as a whole. So I highly suggest for every black belt, try to recreate her history in Jiu-Jitsu and see how much self-defense they have into. Because without the self-defense, he cannot even be a tough black belt, as I believe, and he cannot even be a good professor, as I believe. So self-defense is our backbone, and we have to reestablish self-defense in all levels in Jiu-Jitsu. And I'm very happy to say also, we're not only bringing self-defense back, but also we're going to bring self-defense championship with somehow a soft way for people to be able to demonstrate, kids demonstrating their skills without competing and fighting each other in the highest and the toughest level, but to demonstrate, to become emotion and motivated to practice self-defense techniques and be able to be a champion in self-defense tournaments. I feel like that's a great addition for the community, which sometimes they're not preparing themselves to fight, but they have to prepare themselves to how to defend themselves.
One thing that's interesting regarding this self-defense initial environment is that we were discussing before the video, is that when you have a standalone self-defense program, like we have been now for 10 years with Gracie Combatives here in Torrance and at all the certified and on Gracie University, when you have a standalone self-defense program, you have a culture of connection. You have two people who are working together for the enemy who is not in the room. He's out there. And that's the same way you teach your private student for the first 40 classes or for the first 6 months.
That's without a doubt give the student the sense of belonging,
yes,
and partnership, and not exactly feel intimidated every time he comes to the class.
Which is huge. The reason for the dropout.
Yeah. Exactly.
So this idea of a connection culture that is so alive in Gracie Combatives and in all certified training centers and in any school who's doing a good self-defense program in the beginning, yes, it's so critical because once someone's there for a year, let's just say, connecting and learning street self-defense, and self-defense is not just some standing stationary grips and self-defense. We're talking standing, ground, top, bottom, punch, guard, submissions, all aspects from the top to the bottom of the fight. The techniques that allowed, Rickson to go against Zulu, my grandfather to do the challenge match, to hoist against Dan Severin, the techniques they use and the principles that helped them survive those encounters, that's what we mean by say self-defense.
And you guys, I'm sure, can agree with this. The two of you have been teaching much longer than us, but the students that you have been teaching for 10 plus years, 15 years, 20 years, those students, they have what you have, which is a very solid foundation. And people out there who are running schools, you want students for 10, 20, 30 years. You want people to be lifelong students, the father, the children, the whole family. So all of this is an effort to help you create an environment where people can really, be solid and go forever.
And not only that, create an environment which is perfect for average Joes.
Yes.
Exactly. Because we're not here treating and specializing in champions. I feel like the most service I did for 90% of my students, they not even compete, they not even get brown belts. But they're happy and they're confident as always because they feel like they have something who's gonna protect them and direct them in life for forever. So I see Jiu-Jitsu as a great facilitator is a great tool for anyone. So if you focus on competition, you're gonna basically select everybody who don't like competition. And that's hard for the industry, that's hard for actually you lack of service.
Wow.
So the idea is to be in service. The idea is to promote jiu-jitsu for the people who really need. Like Hélio Gracie, he was really need jiu-jitsu. 135 pounds, could not make one pull-up. I mean, if you know jiu-jitsu, has nothing. So the idea for us to create a sport like it, activity, but to give to the weak one the sense of empowerment, that's huge. That's what really makes a difference in a great professor and just an average professor who try to stimulate you to compete with your personal abilities. I think jiu-jitsu is much more than being an athlete or a tough guy. Jiu-jitsu is something you do for life in order to protect your family, in order to balance with your training, spar with your kids, and share love and respect and friendship and empowerment. So in any level, even after you get tired and retired, you're still using the jiu-jitsu mechanisms to live. Strategy, controlling of emotions, patience, the ability to handle pressure. All those are situations you learn, and once you really possess those, you're there for life. So I feel like jiu-jitsu is the greatest tool for anyone.
One thing we were discussing before we turned on the cameras as well is this idea that a good preliminary self-defense program that we're talking about, it's too easy to look at it and say, oh, it's just, 36 lessons, 75 techniques, big deal. It's a huge deal. It's not the 70 plus techniques that matters. What matters is that every single lesson in that standalone self-defense preliminary program, like Gracie Combatives, every single lesson reinforces the same principles. Energy efficiency, distance management, leverage use, natural body movements, so that you can develop an understanding of what should be allowed to enter your arsenal of, because self-defense doesn't end after Gracie Combatives. It continues for the rest of your career. And like Hidon mentioned, you acquire a filter once you graduate from that program. And what does that mean? What's a filter? Imagine a water filter, and you want to drink pure water, and water's coming in. As water's coming through, if you don't have a filter, you can't identify what should be let into your self-defense arsenal or not. So someone who graduates from Gracie Combatives, for the rest of their career, you can show them any move, like you could do with us, and say, hey, show me some crazy sport technique, and right away we ask ourselves 2 or 3 questions, and what do we notice? This is nice, beautiful, it looks nice,
but not quite.
But cannot add to the arsenal. No. We can't trust it with our life and our family's life. So the more important thing than a set of techniques is the acquisition of a healthy filter. Now here's the crazy part. If you have a water filter and some sand gets caught in the water filter, sand is not a bad thing. I love sand. I go to the beach, I play volleyball, I surf, I love the beach 100%. But I don't want to drink it. And drinking is comparable to adding it to the arsenal that you will trust when your life is on the line. The healthy filter acquisition is the most important thing that is accomplished in an initial self-defense program, because then the rest of your career is always filtered. Now, what if someone's trained for 10 years, didn't have a filter, just learned everything, and now they go learn a nice self-defense curriculum, ours or another one? Can you retroactively apply your techniques and your mindset and filter the water that you've been ingesting for so long? I think so.
I hope so.
I think so.
And I think so because it just makes sense. You're not going to learn ride a bike in the wrong way. So once you're exposed to a bike, you immediately going to feel like, wow, why I should not ever did this before.
Right.
So things become naturally adjustable.
I feel like many of you, like myself, when Rickson says something, we're like, oh, what's he saying? Because of who he is and what he's done for jiu-jitsu and the martial arts. And when the Global Federation, sets its mission statement and says what they want to do, naturally we see that and we're like, all right, we can see that this is something bigger than us, and we made shifts and adaptations. We had to change some things to fall in alignment with this. And I can see it being difficult for other people, more difficult to fall in alignment, because for us, we had to add something that we already do.
Right.
But many schools that don't have self-defense standalone programs, that's a bigger addition for them.
It's a bigger change.
And I can sense that people out there might be, first of all, they feel like they already know self-defense. They They don't know what they don't know what they don't know. They don't know what they don't know. But on top of that, the idea of having to like go back and maybe relearn the self-defense. So I personally have met, brown belts and black belts who say, I don't really know this stuff that well. Can you help me with it? And luckily they knew me and I was able to show them things that I've learned through the years. But so I wonder what do we advise to a black belt who is very good? He's a very good athlete.
Tough athlete.
A part of me feels like he or she will pick up the self-defense so much faster than they believe.
Right.
Yes, and the mission on learning self-defense is to be able to work better for the students. Because if you don't have these skills, you have to present athletic movements, ability movements, agile movements, but not 100% technical moves. So competitors normally they use what they have, what nature gives it to them as the heart, toughness, and bulge ears and that. So the guys want to compete, and they tough. But average Joe, he don't have even competition in his vision. He wants to just be safe. Mm-hmm. And in order for you as a teacher give safety to a student who is weaker than you, who is uncoordinated, not as so. If it's a big problem, if you don't have the tools. So in order to grow as an industry, in order for you to triple your amount of students, in order for you to help much more people in the society, is a must needed skills. And as we bring this back, as we start to talking about, people are going to start to recognize either I know or I don't know. Either I want to learn and become a certified self-defense instructor, or I want to still in compete. That's an option they all going to have forever. Mm-hmm. But we, as a global federation, have to represent the reference, which is going to be the reference for the future of Jiu-Jitsu, because otherwise Jiu-Jitsu is going to drown.
Yes.
So having the energy, positive energy, to bring back Jiu-Jitsu, have the hope, which professors are everywhere are going to say, wow, I like to teach this in my school because I want to, first, make a better service. Second, make much more money because I'm going to have more school retention, I'm going to have a better programs for kids, women, self-defense, law enforcement, and so on. So all those services are there to be used. If the Jiu-Jitsu instructor chooses to don't use, that's his choice. But we have to expose this for the greater public, and the public will know what they want to learn. So based on that, I'm very confident Jiu-Jitsu will bring back self-defense in a fully way, and the community will be much well served. So I'm very optimistic about the future of Jiu-Jitsu.
Now, regarding what Hidon said about guys out there who are purple, brown, or black belts who've been training competition culture the whole time and just kind of grinding it out, and now they assess themselves like you asked them to, and they realize that they did not have a self-defense foundation at all. Nothing. What's interesting is many of those people, we have about 120 certified training centers today, many of the schools are run by guys who have no previous self-defense experience, came on board, learned the program, humble, came in and wanted to learn. And the crazy part is when the self-defense curriculum, Gracie Combatives, was tied to blue belt as it was before, there was a lot of resistance because a black belt, let's say, thought to himself, if I have to go test for my blue belt to become a certified instructor, I don't know if I want to do that, because if I fail my blue belt test, maybe I don't even deserve my black belt. There was a fear of that, So, amongst other reasons, and primarily the collaboration with the Federation to create now what we consider the perfect blue belt path, right? Self-defense first, grappling, resilience, and proficiency later, in addition to contributing and joining the alignment and the movement for that direction. It's great because now a black belt, for example, who wants to become a certified instructor and who wants to teach self-defense curriculums like the ones we possess, can come in and say, okay, I'm going to test for a Gracie Combatives belt and complete that program, but it never existed when I was there, and it has nothing to do with my blue belt, and I still deserve my blue belt when I earned it back then. So I don't know, it's just interesting that, it's one of the benefits of having this is that people from the outside don't feel the need to retest for a blue. They already earned their blue belt, but you should check your filter.
You should check your filter. And people, as jiu-jitsu instructors, I have many years left to teach. But as you teach, your 20 years of teaching, 30 years, 40 years, to some degree, you yourself are going to want to fall back on teaching the techniques that are the most true, the purest jiu-jitsu. Because you yourself, right, pretty soon there's going to be a point where jiu-jitsu catches up with these instructors where they can no longer make these techniques work that are not energy efficient, natural body movements. So just as an instructor, I think about my grandfather Eddie Gracie and how he was teaching jiu-jitsu until 90, but he was teaching things that he would teach people on their 10th day in a private class. But he's teaching it to me when I'm 18 years old. So he's still teaching it because it is the core. So as a teacher, having that in your arsenal and owning self-defense and owning jiu-jitsu as an art of self-defense, it will allow you to impact lives for longer.
Yes, and it's funny because the same way some black belts, they very highly skilled in competition. When I, in my seminars, go and be presented to maybe 40 different black belts who never learn with me and he never get experience in basic foundation positions, they get very impressed with those invisible details. And they all become very much passionate about the things they don't know. So open your mind and create like a curiosity about what is there to teach for a weaker person. Gonna make any strong guy feel like, wow, I should learn better because before I've been resolving the problems with my own skills and heart and toughness. But in order for me to make a weaker guy do this, I need special skills. So and that's where I feel like everybody have to keep training hard, everybody have to keep learning as the most they can to spread the beneficial aspects of the art, which, you know, for us, in my heart, will be forever. And that's what I see for the future of Jiu-Jitsu. It's just a bright future.
You want to say something?
Yes, I just want to bring one more point, like one point that your daddy made to me being back in Brazil many years ago when I was talking about Jiu-Jitsu in America, how people are strong and tough. And the only requirement he asked me for a black belt was to make sure that every black belt knew self-defense. That was the only thing. He didn't care about any other technique, nothing. He just made sure that all you guys will understand self-defense. And I believe what you guys did with the combative, what I was doing before, I was teaching self-defense on the end. What you guys did, you guys flipped that and put a self-defense in the beginning. That's caught my attention right away because I thought it was a very good point to please Grandmaster Gracie, self-defense aspect, the art. Because, you know, every time I hear people talk about self-defense, they're looking for other martial arts to try to get better in self-defense. It was a disservice, you know.
A disgrace to Jiu-Jitsu.
Complete disgrace.
It has everything.
It was the best system on the planet, but nobody was teaching. So I believe that bringing the self-defense back to the beginning, to the aspect, right from the beginning, makes this as a basics, is a foundation, and you're going to build such incredible people after that because they're going to learn how to protect themselves from the day one. They're not going to be victims. You know, we are being a little bit victims on the beginning, but we're tough. We kind of survive, strong. You're already smiling there because I used to be spanking class. This guy here, on my first 3 months of class, let's go to compete. Took me to competition. He gave me just a couple of tricks. No, you're just going to go there, put the guy in the guard, hold like this, hold like that. I said, okay, let's go there. The guy passed my guard like 25 times.
But you're still here.
But I was there. I survived.
It worked.
It worked.
For you, it worked.
I just want to make sure now they work for everybody, like the little kids.
Everyone's not as tough.
You know, for the women,
Yes.
for the fragile people, for the guy, for the doctor, for the lawyers, for the guys that want to get involved in this grinding right from the beginning. Give them some self-defense first. Allow the self-protection come to the body. After that, my friend, now you go for the grind. Now you know what to do. Now you're no longer fresh meat. Right. That's the point.
And what Rickson was referring to regarding the benefits of doing this. You guys, this system has been, this idea of a standalone self-defense program, the idea of a curriculum designed in connection culture and self-defense and a healthy street fight filter, which leads into the rest of Jiu-Jitsu, has been in place for 10 years. And for many of those years at certified training centers all over the world. The success is unquestionable. It's no doubt. So for those of you who are wondering, should I do this? Because some black belts are wondering, is it good for my business and is it good for my academy to do this? They're going to question whether they can change the culture of their school. It's a big change. Every change is scary. But let me tell you, it's worth it. Every school that has come on board was one way before and is now another way. And what Rickson's recommending and what we have done eagerly and are now continuing to do with his blessing, which has been amazing for us, is to continue to empower and to put that first For us, all it was a milestone modification, but the systems have been in place, and I don't know how much more enthusiastic we can say that no matter who you're affiliated with, no matter where you teach, no matter who you learn from, if you're not giving your students jiu-jitsu that they came looking for,
or that they didn't come looking for, but you know that they need.
Yeah.
Right? They might not have been looking for that. They might have said, I want to compete. But we know the truth. We know what they need. And that's our service is to give it to them.
Well, and we're so grateful to be sitting side by side with, legends in their own right, professors Rickson and Pedro here, because we recognized this a long time ago amongst ourselves to say, man, if we don't do this, jiu-jitsu will suffer the same fate that has affected almost every other sport of martial art. If you want to learn kicking techniques, what do? Taekwondo. If you want to learn how to punch, what do? Boxing. If you want to learn some throws, what do? Judo. So all of those arts, which were once rooted in combat effectiveness when they began for survival of some sort, and the list goes on, by the way, today, in their sport of practice, represent a small sliver of a fight. And jiu-jitsu is headed down the same path.
Yes,
It's only a matter of a few generations before the jiu-jitsu that we all learned growing up and that the world fell in love with. The reason jiu-jitsu is speed growing the way it is not because it looks pretty, it's because it worked when it mattered. In the epic historical fights of the past that these guys, Lance Bachelor, every fight Rickson's ever done, Hoist, our uncles, our dad, our grandfather, all those fights, you admire those and I'm going to go learn that, and then you show up at a school that doesn't teach anything that resembles that. So we call it the martial curse. For jiu-jitsu, we have kind of united, and Rickson has taken the lead on with the federation to prevent this from happening. And I think that's such an honorable cause, and we couldn't be more proud to be making changes necessary to align ourselves with that mission, because if we don't do it, who will?
Yes. Yeah. And I'm very thankful for your vision, and of course, I'm proud of what you guys been doing. These little adjustments make a complete alignment with the federation. And now I just keep working for the future and trying to bring those great competitors, black belts and such, to bring their students who have competition skills to become part of the jiu-jitsu culture fully by practicing and teaching self-defense, because that's our core for sure, and that's what the Jiu-Jitsu Global Federation stands for.
He said it briefly. He said, open your curiosity to go and learn and get out there and learn. So to some degree, if you haven't been so self-defense, throughout your years of training, you're almost very fortunate, because now you have a whole new, box of things to open and learn and go back to being a student. And you mentioned how you're always a white belt, right? Always a student.
Yep.
So don't forget how it felt to be learning something new and, hear what Rickson has to say when it comes to jiu-jitsu as self-defense, and it will make you feel like a kid or a brand new white belt.
And something interesting happened, like in the past, just when we arrived in the US, hundreds of times we've been teaching karate black belts who at the time they feel like they know everything. And when they get exposed to real jiu-jitsu, they said, "Why, man, I lost 20 years of my life because I was doing karate. Now I know what real things is." So somehow, when I go in a seminar those days, I feel like the same impression for many black belts, jiu-jitsu black belts. They feel like, wow, man, I never thought this existed in jiu-jitsu. And it's unbelievable how much, if you're curious, if you're interested, if you have your open mind, how much more jiu-jitsu you can learn in your life. I'm still learning, so it's all about keeping your mind open and keep the positiveness to become a better businessman, a better fighter, and a better teacher. Good luck.
You guys, it's that simple. If you're going to drink water for the rest of your life, invest in a nice, healthy street fight filter. Without a filter, there's no certainty. Much respect. Couldn't be more honored to be on the mat with these guys, and we can't wait to see what the future brings. Thank you, guys.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.